Human trafficking is modern-day slavery, and the number of people affected by it is growing each year. There is a new victim every 30 seconds. There are approximately 20 to 30 million slaves of human trafficking around the world today. And according to the National Human Trafficking Hotline, there have been 3,186 cases of sex trafficking in the US in 2017 alone, and 34 of those cases were in Wisconsin. Knowing what we know about human trafficking, it is important to note that it is all around us, even if it feels invisible. We as a society often feel uncomfortable confronting sensitive situations such as these, and this is part of what leads to the stigma for the victims. This stigma is part of what makes it so difficult for them to leave their traffickers and create a better life for themselves. Knowing what we know, it is important to look at how we can help these people by seeing the human in human trafficking. Up until about a year ago, I did not know nearly as much as I do now about sex trafficking, and I still have plenty to learn. I have always wanted to work with survivors of sexual assault and domestic violence, but I never thought I would have the opportunity to work with survivors of human trafficking. Last spring, I was introduced to the program I Heart World, which is one of the programs nationally that works with survivors on their way to recovery. Last fall, I was an intern with the program I Heart World and have since been hired on to continue working with them. Working with I Heart World and these women has opened my eyes in a way I could have never imagined. The program I Heart World helps survivors on their way to recovery. Their mission is to combat sex trafficking through aftercare, prevention, and awareness. The women I have had the opportunity to work with are some of the most resilient women I have ever met. That being said, they do not define themselves as victims. They are survivors from their trauma, and they have been through a lot. That being said, we need to help these survivors and see their individual stories, and because they have survived. One of the most important pieces of information that I have learned working with survivors is that they have been through a lot. While they were being trafficked, they did not have a voice of their own or control of their actions. They could not speak their truth. Not having a voice or control did not stop the action and the people's beliefs of the stigma towards what they were going through. Once they become survivors, they are empowered to find their voice. Some of them find it more easily than others. Everybody heals in their own way. But one thing I have noticed is that once these women find their voice, nothing stops them. They have a voice and a story. Their words deserve to be heard. Quotes will help us see a glimpse into the reality of what they went through. I Heart World interviewed survivors and asked them what they wanted people to know about trafficking. Therefore, I would like to share with you some quotes from survivors, followed by some additional information. Listen to them express the reality of their experiences and what they went through. Here's what they said. I did not have the money to fulfill basic needs or a way out. Some people turn to selling their bodies when they feel they have no other option, when they do not have a job, food to eat, or means to provide for their children. This is referred to as survival sex. This is not an option the victim wants to make. It is a means of survival. Whether it is survival sex or not, traffickers take the money earned by the trafficked individual, and that creates an even deeper sense of dependency and ownership. Without having their own money, personal information, or documentation, or even a cell phone, her every move has to go through her trafficker. This just adds to the control and manipulation the traffickers create. Traffickers, sometimes known as pimps, are master manipulators. They take their time to learn the vulnerabilities of the individual whom is their next target. They use a careful grooming process to create a trusting relationship with the individual, and this process makes the victim feel like it is impossible to leave. Traffickers also use many forms of force, fraud, coercion, emotional, physical abuse, and threats to them or their family, which makes the victim feel like there is no way out. Those are only a handful of the techniques that traffickers may use. It begins with a lifestyle you were raised in, and you get stuck in that mindset. Some people grow up in households where behaviors such as domestic abuse, substance abuse, and sexual abuse are something they are experiencing or witnessing regularly. Anyone who grew up experiencing these behaviors is at a higher risk for trafficking. Worldwide, nearly half of the trafficked children are recruited by family members. Just think, if the only way you knew to prove your love to your family was to allow them to traffic you. If this type of acceptance was all you grew up experiencing, how would you know that there is any other way out there to live? Imagine the strength it must take to break away from those behaviors. Unfortunately, many injustices in society are a vicious cycle, and sex trafficking is just one of those injustices. Being exposed to domestic abuse actually changes a person's perception and makes them more tolerant to abusive behaviors, which makes them more vulnerable to traffickers. Poverty and prejudice create dangerous situations, which at times makes trafficking seem like a better option. But what we need to remember in these situations is we cannot victim blame. We need to focus our blame on the societal conditions and the individuals that led them there. I need love and hugs just as much as I need education on mental health and trauma. Both are really important to my healing. One type of trafficker is referred to as a Romeo pimp, which take advantage of the natural human need for love. They will overload their victims with affection and gifts, and this makes the victim believe that they're in a real relationship. This emotional manipulation is a way of convincing the victim to stay even after betrayal from the Romeo pimp. Survivors need love just like we all do. I am not a product of someone's violent behavior. I'm teachable, I can grow. It is very unfortunate, but survivors are often labeled as hopeless, traumatized victims of trafficking. Sexual trauma, abuse, poverty, food insecurity, and home instability actually changes the brain and affects its ability to function properly. Changes to the brain actually change the way one behaves and learns, but this does not have to be permanent. Survivors can reprogram their brain through trauma-informed therapy, determination, and patience. Renewal, growth, and restoration is always possible with the strength and resilience that these survivors have. They are the humans in human trafficking, and we need to see them. For more stories and information like this, you can visit iHeartWorld's Facebook page or website. To conclude, all we can do is to hold on to hope that by spreading awareness, we can help those victims on their way of becoming survivors. We can do all we can to help these survivors and those who will one day be survivors. We as a population need to stop seeing the nameless, faceless problem and start seeing the people, the women, the children, the families who are striving to get out from under this stigma. This all-encompassing trauma of trafficking is only part of what we need to address. We can all learn our role and what we can do to help these women and our society. I am proud to say that it cannot be said that I was silent when they needed me. Just by being aware of what is going on, you can help too by not being silent. Keep your eyes open and help spread awareness for this issue of modern-day slavery, human trafficking. Be the voice for those who have been silenced for too long. Now we are seeing the humans in human trafficking. Thank you.